Kia ora koutou katoa, no mai haere mai ki tēnei wāhanga. Ko Phoebe Christensen tōku ingoa, and today for this wāhanga I'm joined by NZEI Te Riu Roa member Joe Young and our special guest speaker Stacey Morrison. So just to start us off, I've got a little karakia to open us together. Tu taua mai I runga, tu taua mai I raro, tu taua mai I roto, tu taua mai I waho, kia tau ai te Māori tū, Māori ora ki te katoa, haumie, huie, haekie.
Kia ora.
Alright, kia ora everybody. So I'm just going to quickly run through the tikanga for today, and then I'm going to pass it over to Joe and Stacey to introduce themselves as well. So this webinar is going to be recorded for editing, so that we can give it back to you guys as an ongoing resource after today. Now, while we are going through this, if you'd like, you can introduce yourself in the chat function. So just pop in your name and where you're joining us from today. It'll be awesome to see. So if you haven't been on Zoom before, you just access the chat by clicking on the little speech bubble at the bottom of the icon. So today we're going to be having a conversation with Stacey about the future of education and what it looks like when we weave in te ao Māori through all of our planning and teaching and mahi as educators. We'll have a little kōrero with Stacey, we'll have a conversation together, and we'll finish up with a Q&A session. So we've gone ahead and collated some of the questions that you put forward in your registration, and chucked in a couple of other things that we've thought of as well. We're aiming to finish this within an hour, but because we're the last webinar, maybe we'll go over time, who knows? We're not going to be holding anyone up if we get stuck in conversation. All right, so let's introduce ourselves. I'll start because I realise I haven't actually done that yet. No Turanga Nui a Kiwa o, e noho ana o ki Kapiti. Ko Phoebe Christensen tōku ingoa. So my name's Phoebe Christensen and I work part-time at NZEI Te Riu Roa as a student and beginning teacher organiser. But I'm here today as a representative of the New Educators Network Te Kupenga Rangatahi because I'm also a student speech language therapist at the moment. Joe, I'll pass the rako over to you if you'd like to introduce yourself now.
He rākau he taonga. Ko tainui te waka, ko maunga tautari te maunga, ko Ngāti Raukawa te iwi, ko Ngāti Huri te hapu, ko Pikitū te marae. He wakato tani whārau, he pikohi tani wha, he pikohi tani wha. He Gavin Barnett rawa, ko Liana Prince, ko Matua, he Jared, Ash, Scott, o ko Tunane, ko Kelly rawa, ko Holly o ko Taina, ko Jacob Young, tama, ko Joe Young tōku ingoa. Kia ora tātou.
Kia ora, Joe.
Kei Aotearoa, tēnā koutou katoa e whakarongo mai nā koutou katoa kua piri mai ki tēnei kaupapa. Ko Stacey Morrison tōku ingoa, he uri tēnei no tawa te kapua, no tū haurangi Ngāti Wāhiao, tainoa ki tū wharetoa, no te taho tōku paua, ngō Ngāti Irake, Huki Wairewa, he uri hoki no tahu pōtiki, e mihi atu nei. And my best qualification is I'm the mother of 3 children, 3 tamariki kōrero Māori, and I also, is this a good thing to admit? I'm the chair of a school board as well.
Nice, kia ora. Cool. So, I mean, beyond what we already knew about you, Stacey, you're clearly deep in education. So this is going to be an exciting conversation for us today. What I'm going to do now then is I'm going to leave the rako with you, Stacey. If you want to tell us your story, introduce us to your kaupapa today.
Kia ora. Joe, tuatahi nei ka mihi nui au ki a koe, ko koe tērā kei te mura o te ahi, and all of the teachers that are spending your time outside of school, always looking for more, always looking for opportunities to grow and to bring more to our tamariki. I just have such respect for you. And I guess I need to start with saying that I come from a whānau of teachers. My husband, Stacey Morrison, is a teacher and associate professor at Massey, and we're both lifelong learners, but his father was a teacher. He's got a brother and sister who are high school teachers. My grandparents were both teachers, Car and Monty Daniels. So It's very much in our whakapapa, and I, as a mother, have to stop myself being like a teacher. But it's because, I guess, my biggest passion has been reclaiming Te Reo Māori. It was not a language that I grew up with. I learnt Japanese when I was at high school as an exchange student, and that actually led me to the love of my own language. I so enjoyed learning Japanese, but it actually created a moke-moke-tanga, a real loneliness and a yearning for my own language. And so in doing that, that's probably brought together so many facets of my life. I work in broadcasting and radio and television. And although at the time when I was at high school, people thought Japanese would be the language for your career, it has ended up that Te Reo Māori has been a helpful language for my career in some points of it. At other points, it was not seen as very valuable. It was seen as perhaps a barrier to getting the big gigs. But things change, and they've changed extremely quickly in the last 5 years. My husband, Scotty, and I also create resources, particularly wānanga, also Māori for Grown-Ups online, Toromai with Massey. We created an online free intro course in Te Reo and Tikanga Māori, along with Professor Meihana Jury, and that now has, I think it's 45,000 registrations worldwide, so it's free, easy to access. We've also written quite a few books. Scotty's done Māori Made Easier, Made Easier, yes, Made Easy, 1 and 2, and also the audiobook, Māori at Home, that we created together, and I've created some children's books. And as I say, my biggest qualification is raising tamariki kōrero Māori that is returning Te Reo Māori to our whānau, because it wasn't there in either of our upbringings. And so this has been really trying to reclaim their birthright, and therefore it's meant tough decisions in their schooling every step of the way. Some predictable, some unpredictable. But as a really engaged and interested parent, you could read Annoying, one of those parents, if you like. I've really appreciated all of the pedagogical information that teachers have shared with us, what it's taken to create a rumaki, for instance, in our kahui ako, and then on our board and as a chair, just seeing, I guess, where principals and teachers just can champion and make massive difference to communities. Now I feel like I'm going on. I really want to hear from Jo.
Kia ora. So probably my biggest kaupapa is just around the assessment-based kaupapa Māori, that I should be able to walk into any setting, no matter where it is, see, feel and hear Te Ao Māori in a natural, authentic setting. I think that's one of the most powerful vehicles, because what's good for Māori is good for all our tamaiti. And probably just a little plug for me is on Te Whatu Pōkeka is probably something that I live and breathe, and overarching Te Whāriki and Te Riti. But I think if you live and breathe something, era, it becomes a natural way of teaching. So in my sphere in early childhood, I've worked in all contexts and in whēnui, and now back into mainstream, where of course we know through statistics a huge percentage of our Māori tamaitia, and we're doing some really great work within our association to really truly have a tiriti based, because if it starts from the top, then all the way down you're seeing, you're feeling all the kaupapa, the policies, the procedures, the emails, everything. If it has that true tiriti partnership, people can see themselves, hear themselves, and feel themselves. So, yeah.
Oh, kia ora, Jo, that's really powerful. But this has also just put a thought into my brain. So I am going to throw you a question just immediately here. But when you talk about your association and the mahi that you are all doing to really have a treaty-based partnership model for your association, where did you start? Because I'm assuming that there's a few people and groups involved in this mahi, right? Because you've got your individual teachers, you've got your kindergartens, and then you've got everything that sits around those kindergartens with the association, eh? So how does that all fit together in your journey?
So I think it starts from a wāwata, a vision for kohonohono for early childhood, and it starts from the top. So I'm thinking, what can we do to provide resources, help practices to support kaiakoma. So that's through the, like Stacey said, there's so many free resources available, but also having a kaupapa Māori kaiako within our association. And of course, we all know with the Teachers Council standards changing, that real boost for Te Ao Māori, that is a requirement. That's not here. These are our expectations. And if we have expectations up here, do you know what? Our kaiakoma are going to meet that if we have the resourcing, the time, and the professional development to support that. And that doesn't need to be on a grand scale. That actually just needs to be from within, that the kaiako see that and are intrinsically motivated to be part of it. Because we know if you don't do things collaboratively, we don't have that drive, it ends up being a poster on the wall, it ends up being a resource in the shelf collecting dust. We want our tamaiti, our mokopuna of the future, to have kaiako that are passionate about Te Ao Māori, about te reo miona tikanga. And if we can't drive that from above, how do we shift that pedagogy and that progression? So I hope that answered a little bit of that question.
Add something as well. What I've seen is that it just takes a couple of champions and you can actually change a lot. And I just emphasise that you don't have to be a Te Reo Māori expert to be a Te Reo Māori champion. And so to champion, I mean, like say, Phoebe, it's really exciting to me to see you as a new breed of educator and that it's just very natural for you. And you find that these kupu Māori actually express what you want to say so elegantly and eloquently. Yet I know that some people might feel left behind. So it's about stepping into that lifelong learning and that growth, which I believe is positive for tamariki to see that we all continue to learn, to utilise resources, but also it can be a few key people that are championing change, creating structures that support kaiako and that support the hapori as well. And I'd also like to say as a parent, it is on us as well. We have opportunities to be supportive of our kura. That depends if we have the capacity to do that, then sometimes it's actually just turning up. Sometimes it's just supporting kaupapa and also considering for our whānau what our vision for our whānau is and what sort of education would like our tamariki to participate in, and does that reflect Aotearoa whānau, the whole of our country?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's something that I think about all the time as someone studying to become a part of the education system, right? It's thinking now, what am I doing and what am I learning and how am I approaching this in a way that is going to, one, honour te tiriti within our work. It's going to whakamana our tamaiti Māori, our tamariki Māori, but also in a way that means that I, as someone who is, I'm not a reo expert, I'm not a tikanga expert, but I'm happy to do my best, right? I'm happy to give it a go. And if I can be that person that encourages other people who I'm studying alongside to give it a go too and to learn and grow together in the Te Ao Māori world, then that's a huge step in the right direction, I think, for us, eh?
That's winning.
Yeah. So I'm thinking a little bit now about what you both touched on, which is how we weave together thinking about te reo Māori and bringing that into our practice, but also tikanga Māori. How do those two things weave together, like within your centre and the work that you're doing, Jo?
So again, I really do believe it comes down to philosophy, that everything you do has to have that philosophy, that base, that foundation. So for us, it's looking at mana whenua. So what is the mana whenua of Mairohi? And it's Ngāti Toa. And our pūrākau is around Aotearoa and Ririroa. So it's about our tamaiti seeing, feeling those legends and that as a living, breathing way of being. But also that's a way of being for kaiakoma. So we should be hearing throughout the day, e rā, no matter what time you come in, is kia kaha ake, manakitanga, tinihanga, pāpaipai, manakitanga, whakatakataka, you know, that you're looking at the children, you're challenging the children, you're really understanding their development, but also with a te ao Māori lens. So as Kaiakoma, our philosophy is around those virtues of manaki, of aroha and manawanui. So I think it really starts with that team kōrero of saying, these are our values here, these are our dispositions, this is what mana whenua, this sits well for us, that our children can see Aotearoa in the harbour as they come to Kindy. They can see Ririroa up in Ranginui. It's on all our resources, and I think it starts mahi tahi.
I guess when people as well, if they hear the term te reo me ona tikanga, you often hear that together. So if you know te reo as the language, me ona tikanga is really interesting because it kind of talks about two things. One is about the structures of the language, but also the fact that tikanga is interrelated to, inextricable from te reo Māori. So when we speak te reo Māori, there is tikanga Māori embedded in that. For instance, if you talk about tangaroa and you personify tangaroa, then you actually need to know the tikanga. Why are we talking about the ocean in a different way where we personify tangaroa and can then have a different relationship with tangaroa? So that's where tikanga comes in. And because of the way of our language of te reo Māori, it's so intrinsic. You hear it in many things. So for karakia, it's actually quite hard to elegantly translate that for children. It's not a prayer, it's not a blessing exactly. It's an incantation, which sounds different in English, right? But it's an affirmation, and it's a framework for behaviour. It's a framework for well-being. So if we understand that when we come into kura, and if we do karakia, what we're doing is we're going, okay, I've been really busy outside, maybe I've been busy trying to get to school, and now in karakia, the tikanga tells us and helps us to centre ourselves, to consider what our goals are for the day, to bring our mauri, to recognise where our bodies are at, and then to look at who I'm working with, my whānau, and then we bring our energy together just like you did today, Phoebe, and that sets us up for learning. So that's how tikanga actually considers the whole student and considers, because it's so beautifully seated in humanity, how people work best and what people need in order to engage best with learning. So that's where, just one example, I think, of how tikanga can help us in our classrooms.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, what I was thinking about the whole time you were speaking, Stacey, is that the concepts that we get through tikanga Māori are so intrinsically related to what we're bringing to education practice, like this idea of thinking about a child holistically, not separate from their own ecology and their own environments outside of the classroom or the centre setting, is absolutely fundamental to growing our children.
Yeah, that's the brilliance of these words like wānanga. It's a verb, it's a noun, but it's also, there are structures around wānanga that we've always understood that's very ancient to our culture about how people can engage with learning best. And then also what that requires of you, both physically, mentally, spiritually, and also the taha whānau, so how your whānau is engaging with it, or how if taha whānau is not happening for you, you're not having good social time, then learning's harder as well. So I guess you get clues in a lot of Māori words as to how we consider learning. Like kōrero is not just to talk, it's also to write, it's also to listen, it's to be an orator. So that really tells us about the deep interpretations and deep understanding of what it takes to be a healthy and engaged learner. And it's right there in te reo and tikanga Māori.
Absolutely. Jo, I'm going to throw this over to you because I'm interested in hearing your thoughts about what Stacey's been saying in terms of your practice day to day with tamariki, with our youngest tamariki even.
Again, I absolutely tautoko the whakaaro and the kōrero around tikanga. And I think, again, if you have that tikanga in place, we call it in English as a ritual, that in this place we have karakia, we have wānanga, we do Sorry. So for us, again, it's that tikanga whakaaro, it's that nā ununga kiti pau parapara, it's that mohiotanga mātauranga maramataka. So it's a way of doing, a way of being, and a way of who tamaitia. And the biggest thing I think is no wai queer, no nā wai queer, e ahu mai queer here, like getting to know the child on an individual level, and when they first arrive, and if you don't know where they're from, you know where they're from whom they are from, and their whakapapa, then I think you can't delve into more about that child. So te ha, and that first initiation into the early childhood context or any setting is a really important practice to make people even want to be here. Like, is this their place? If they don't have that and you don't inquire, then you'll never get to know that invisible backpack that brings that child, what that child brings with them.
I really love that metaphor, Jo, of an invisible backpack. That's such a great way to think about everything else that's happening with that child outside of the four walls of the centre or the classroom, eh? Wow, that's powerful. I have a question for both of you, but I'm going to throw it over to Stacey first this time. I'm thinking about, you talked a little bit about how you started your own reo journey and how that was spawned by your interest in learning Japanese at high school. I'm really keen to hear more about what really pushed you into Te Reo Māori and comparing your own journey to that of your children who are reo speakers, eh? So, yeah.
As an aside, that's a really interesting one for kids who are native speakers or Te Reo Māori as their first language. They have a completely different experience. We call it their birthright. And as a mother who's a second language learner, even just saying that out loud, I actually wrote a column about this recently. It's crazy. Who brings up kids, the hardest job ever, in their second language? And why would you do that? The reason why you do that is because you've discovered that real feeling, te karanga, te ngākau, and the calling of your heart to speak a language that you can, I could almost physically feel it, that it was trying to come out of me. And speaking Japanese, which I loved, and I just didn't feel any of that whakama. I just felt like, mari ne hongo wakarimasen, but I'll just give it a go. And whereas the difference with Te Reo Māori, because it is ancestral, and because I knew that it had been kind of, removed from our whānau, that was quite a different experience. So it was scarier, to tell you the truth. I felt a freedom in Japanese because there was no expectation on me. Whereas, because my kuia was a native speaker, I was too scared to study Te Reo Māori at high school because I thought that our Te Reo Māori teacher was scary. And it's so awful to say that because she's the least scary person. She's a beautiful person. It was me projecting onto her that she would have disappointment that as the mokopuna of ka, I couldn't speak Māori. So that's about the disconnect of whānau. It's about the removal of Te Reo Māori and families. So for tamariki Māori and whānau Māori, it's scary to want something that much, because then if you fail, you feel like you've failed your tamariki. I've had so many conversations with mothers, I'd have to say more often. And remember, we usually talk about mother tongue, who are crying because they're worrying that they've not met their own hopes for their tamariki. So this is where we really rely heavily on kura to step in where we feel like we can't do it in terms of Te Reo Māori and actually teaching them. So that's the chunky stuff of teaching tamariki Te Reo Māori. And so then to talk on tamariki who aren't Māori, but can engage with Te Reo Māori, I always say, and teachers as well, this is the language of this Svenua. And this is our first language. This is the language that expresses our mountains, our landscape, our moana. It also, as we look at matariki, it tells us about things that happen distinctively in our place in Aotearoa. It's synced in with our maramataka, It's synced in with what's happening in our skies, in our oceans, in our forests, the kai that we can eat or that we can't eat. It's not trying to make us sit into an overseas and usually northern hemisphere version of, say, let's have Christmas where the guy is wearing a great big warm outfit while we're on the beach. You know, it's very specific to us. So this is an opportunity. And what I'm seeing with parents and with teachers is that sometimes they're trying really hard to catch up with their kids, who are brutal when they correct their parents. They go, Mum, that's not how you say it. You say it like, rangi toto, what's wrong with you? So that's the thing, is that we're leaning on schools. And I wish that I could have engaged earlier, but in the end, it was my mahi. It was the fact that I felt like I couldn't work on Māori programs without having more proficiency. But also, if I'm completely honest, it wasn't commercially driven. It was that I felt like Te Reo Māori would give me a voice that I was missing.
That's really beautiful. Thanks for sharing that with us, Stacey, because I know that was, it's a deeply personal question to ask of someone, particularly someone like you who is reclaiming their language as a second language learner. Jo, I'm kind of interested to hear from your perspective, because we talked a little bit earlier about the new Teaching Council standards around Te Reo Māori for kaiako. And it's going to be hard to say at this point what effect that might have, but I'm kind of interested to hear from you about what your experience has been over your teaching career. Like, have you seen a shift in the number of kaiako who are happy and confident in weaving in te reo me ona tikanga into their practice?
Oh, kia ora. As a mama too, I've seen a huge shift. I studied in the 90s at the beginning, it was like you had a few kupu hau and you were signed off pretty quickly if you said a few kupu hau when your visiting lecturer came. And to where it is now, where, again, I reiterate that the bar has been driven and it should be for all kaiako. I know that some people, again, have barriers, but what Stacey really talked about is that just starting, and actually it's okay not to know. And I think that's the greatest role model you can be, is actually, I only learned Te Reo Māori because I learned 7 kupu hau a week. And I just, I sold my house in Taranaki, moved to Wellington and immersed myself in Te Reo Māori. And I remember this one little boy, Raniera, he kept on laughing at me because I didn't pronounce the kupu hau right, and I'd have to go home. And my son was at a kura kaupapa and a mainstream together, and I'd have to practice on him. And I'd go in the next day and I'd tell his papa, and because his papa was, ira te ao Māori, and I'd said, and then I knew if Raniera heard my dialect and heard that I connected, then I knew that I was pronouncing it right. But there's been a huge, huge shift. And I really think, again, as the generations go on, I think the bar is going to be higher and higher. And I also love that you can go on a journey together, and that we don't all have the answers, but just starting a little way and having that regulation is really a good basis, I think, to see it really shift and progress, which I'm really excited about.
Absolutely. And I love that you made the point, Jo, of it's okay not to know, because I feel this on a spiritual level. Ko Pākehā te iwi, by the way, I don't think I said that at the start. I'm a Pākehā New Zealander. And as part of my reo journey, I spent so much time being afraid to try because of the not knowing and that sort of stuff. But I'm also I'm bilingual. I speak Italian as well. And I'm not afraid to try that, and it's something that we talk about with our learners all the time, right? This is how we learn, is by giving things a go. It's by practicing things. So applying that to yourself as an adult learner is both challenging but also really important, hey?
Yeah, I say to people, it's not our fault that we're at this place that we might feel is inadequate. but it is our choice what we do from here. And I love the structural change that's been implemented, because that helps people go, right, I actually just have to do this. But then also if we can go, I think if we unpack a little bit about why we feel nervous about Te Reo Māori, more nervous about that than say Japanese or Italian, it's because we know that Japanese and Italian are fine as a language. They will survive. We know that Te Reo Māori is still precarious. And then once we understand more about the history of why, that's where discomfort comes in. And that's where I've had really fantastic conversations with Pākehā about feeling guilt, and whether that's a necessary feeling, or whether they can actually be sure to be champions and to tautoko and to be allies, to be homie, and that's a very powerful thing, and I'd say anti-racist thing for you to do as an ally. And that we will all feel uncomfortable in different ways, but it's also good to be mindful of language trauma that exists in whānau and resides inside us. I've known of Māori men who stand at a tangi and they're taking on tūpapaku, people they really care about, and they know that their role is to speak for them, and they can't speak. And so they cry. They're on their marae Aotearoa crying. And that's what we're trying to protect these kids from, is getting to that very difficult place where everything crashes together and go, here is the cost of me not having my language, and yet here I am still representing what I can hold on to in my culture. And actually that's something that as New Zealanders we can all participate in, and we can feel good about once we actually get Te Reo Māori to a place where it really is thriving and revitalised.
Absolutely. I strongly agree with that. Go Papa Stacey. Okay, I have this, I'm not quite sure how to frame this question, so we're going to work together on unpacking where I'm trying to get to with this point. We've been talking a little bit about all of the different pieces of the puzzle that work together in order to make this change that we're talking about in education. So we've got individual change, we've got collaborative change amongst teaching teams, and we've got system level change as well. All of these things working together to shift that culture for us, or with us, I should say. How do we bring people with us when we're all on different parts of our journey, right? We're all on a spectrum of where we might be with our comfort and our knowledge and our engagement so far with Te Reo me o ngā tikanga. So how do we bring such a disparate group of people together with us?
Sorry, I just wanted to touch a little bit on what Stacey said. And as you said, there has been huge shifts and there has been change, but I actually just wanted to share a story that I still think that there is racism out there. So, and I think it needs to be sometimes spoken about, that I'm here, I'm passionate, I love the language, but there's still challenges and barriers out there. So I'm in mainstream, I speak Te Reo Māori in a natural way, and when I moved to my last context, a parent actually later complained about me. They said she doesn't like how the culture's changed since I've come to this context, that the children don't understand what I'm saying, and I found that since she started that other parents have not wanted to bring their child in, especially there was a new enrolment that day as well. So for me, that put me back probably 5 years, because first of all, I think I teach in a natural way and I incorporate in a natural way that you see, feel and hear. And I am me. And so when it was in a messenger on Facebook and it was sent and we had to talk about it as a group. And it really made me think that, yep, we've got all of this stuff, like you just said, everything is changing. There's still, I feel, there's still a pushback that like Stacey said, yep, we can champion all we like and everything like that, but to be a champion actually takes a lot of hautoa. It actually takes a lot of courage, even within our own little context, within our even our community, within our rohi, to speak up. And I feel like we have progress, but I do think we still need to share the stories that aren't so positive, that we're trying our best, but there's still a little way to go.
I think it's a great point, Joe, because it can help, like you're saying, non-Māori educators see what people like Joe go through. And we have experienced it too. We've been at very short whakatau where someone decided to put up their newspaper just to make a point that they were not listening and that they were not participating in that in a school environment. Also that someone completely misinterpreted a whakatau that we did during a level 3 lockdown in Auckland. They thought that it was because of who that person in their whānau was, not understanding that we have a need to welcome tamariki and whānau into our environments, and that's just how we roll. So there are a lot of things that we do have to have courageous conversations in kōrero about and realistic kōrero about. So if we're asking each other to really step into things that are outside of what our usual conversations are. So we like to think that we are all engaged in, say, something that the Teaching Council has directed, but there will be conversations and hatepe and processes and steps that have to be taken to get people there. And sometimes it takes, what I've seen, a principle, because you were talking about how you make change from the top, to be that person who wraps around, references things that are really important, like, okay, sorry, this is just a standard from the Teaching Council. If you think that they can't understand, well, the kids are understanding. You're underestimating their ability to pick up language and actually dissect where it's actually someone's personal resistance and opinion, and then where it's actually, okay, no, this is official language of New Zealand. This is a requirement from the Teaching Council. This is actually something that is in our, we can talk to the board about it if you'd like to, but also just not to let that insidious kind of kōrero derail us, because some people, people will use whatever power they've got, and that's totally understandable. So then to get people on board, it does take literally boards. It takes councils, it takes organisations like both of yours, it also takes parent communities. So when we have communities, we can talk to each other better about it and go, sometimes it's a misunderstanding, sometimes it's a bias, sometimes it's a fear that they are going to miss out on something, and sometimes it's a fear that they are losing something. But let's try to look at it from a gain and an enrichment when we all engage in Te Reo Māori, me ona tikanga.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think about this all the time because obviously, I have a vested interest in thinking about how children learn and acquire language as someone studying speech language therapy.
Well, bilingual children are brilliant. Bilingual kids. So many fascinating things about it. So many, so they talk about this, you here, I'm not telling you how to suck eggs, but, this universal dashboard that bilingual kids are constantly using within milliseconds to go, am I going to use the Māori word for that or the English word for that? I'm going to use the Italian word for that or the Māori or the English. It's like that is great for a learner's brain. Come on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we've got such I'm so excited, and it came out of I'm bringing it back to your Teaching Council standards point before, Joe. It made me so excited to see that standard come in, that teachers, and I'm applying it to myself, even though I won't be covered by the Teaching Council as a speech language therapist, but educators will be required to become proficient over time in speaking Te Reo Māori, which is huge because it made me so excited thinking about all of our youngest children who are going to have that kick start by that exposure to multiple languages. Heaps of New Zealand currently obviously is bilingual or multilingual even, but there's also a number of us, people like me, who grew up monolingual. I was monolingual until I was an adult when I started learning another language. But it's so cool to think about all of the exciting things that can happen when our tamariki have multiple languages in their brains. Oh.
And also, specialist teachers like what you're doing with speech therapy, Te Reo Māori speakers have, if you have a child who needs actually the specialist teaching that you provide or will provide, that's very hard. So then that child is disadvantaged because they're a Te Reo Māori speaker. If they have dyslexia, it's very hard if they're a Reo Māori speaker. So there's this huge need. We have teacher aides who are Reo Māori speakers now, which we understand as a complete privilege, but it's actually needed for access for tamariki kōrero Māori. And that's, if in the English medium, which is what I call mainstream, English medium, they can access that, then why can't they in Te Reo Māori medium?
Yep, strongly agree, Stacey. And I cannot tell you how excited to find out that when I started my degree, we were looking at phonology of Te Reo Māori instead of looking at phonology of English. And that's one example of one paper, right? But it's really cool to see that our institution is thinking about how do we best prepare people to be educating in a te tiriti partnership way.
Kia ora.
I have another question, and it's a big question. I'm not going to choose one of you to go first because you may need a little second to think about it. But I really want to know what your wero or what your challenge is for Te Riu Roa as an organisation, thinking about the future of education weaving in more te ao Māori.
Joe, kei a koe te wā?
He tonga Te Reo Māori. So I honestly believe, again, it needs to start from the top as well, that I know you've got an amazing staff that have the knowledge, and I think there needs to be resourcing and time put within your organisation, within the office, even to begin with. And I think if we're all raising the bar, then I think you guys need to be as well. And really, I know I've sat on Te Reo Ariari, and they are the most amazing people that can shift and drive this. They have the knowledge, you have that in the room. So using the skills and attributes that they have, and really you've got the expertise. There's 40-something thousand kaiakuma throughout New Zealand. And what an awesome way that you can get, like this Matariki webinar, provide hyperlinks. Also within the different rohe, you've got, I know in Whanganui-a-Tara, we have a rohe Aranui Tōmua. You could be utilising those skills, and we represent the whole motu. So imagine if you gave the time and resourcing for those experts to be able to share their knowledge. And they're the people that have the knowledge of the mana whenua, because they are mana whenua, and really working with iwi in a true, authentic way, I think is really, really important. And that's what I'd really love to see, because we have the scope. We represent the kayako, so I'd really love to see that more frontal lobe, because we can do all these webinars in the world and we can have all these amazing speakers, but we also need to look at our own backyard and our own whenua. So, yeah.
Kia ora. And I think he mahi rāranga ne, so to weave people together, and all those things you were talking about before, Phoebe, if people are sitting in different places, it's actually connecting and helping people see why, how, where, very simple things. So I know about the ahu o Te Reo Māori, which is incredibly exciting. So if there are ways that teachers can upskill, I think that you're in a position where you can actually help them engage and anticipate barriers, anticipate issues with engagement, and mitigate them and front foot it and help people step into the opportunities that are being provided.
I love this. This really affirms what we are on our journey of doing, I guess, at the moment. So it's really cool to hear those whittle come through like that. And it reminds me, last month we had our, wrong side, New Educator Network Te Kupenga Rangatahi Activist Hui, where we bring together new educator leaders from across the motu to do some development and learning about how we can be union activists as people who are starting out in the profession. The theme for our hui was Hikoea Te Kōrero, because we wanted to really whakamana all new educators to be able to walk the talk, both as new educators themselves, but as union activists too. And that really spoke to me through both of your kōreros just now. It is about walking the talk, right? We have an opportunity as an organisation and as a collective of educators to lead the way in this kind of mahi. So thank you for that.
Activists as well. You're like, this is a reclamation of terms as well, to say, okay, that says a lot. That's another word is badass. I like that. It's cool.
Yeah. Yes. I love this. Okay. We are coming to the end of our time, unfortunately, but what I wanted to do was throw it back to both of you. If there's any last thoughts that you'd like to share. So, Jo, I'm going to give you the rako first.
Whai iti kahurangi, great outcomes for Māori children are great outcomes for Aotearoa. And hautoa, be like Aotearoa and our tariwha. Take the challenge. It's a really exciting journey, and you can have a lot of fun with it, both with the Māori and with kaikoma and whānau. So enjoy the journey, start iti and grow, and kia ora tātou.
Kia ora, tautoko nei wena whakaro, just to support that. It's a spectrum. You can be a school that's based on maramataka and has a completely different way of engaging with te reo Māori kura kaupapa whare kura, or you can be a kura that's, mostly English medium, yet you see the benefits of these tikanga and also reo Māori and how that actually helps everyone engage in being a learner in New Zealand in a way that is holistic, that is mindful of the needs of the child, of the whānau, of the hapori, of the community, and that it ensures that we have bilingual activators amongst our tamariki. And then to see these little superhumans, they're already digital natives, so let's make them native to being, activists and to being people who are lifelong learners who can engage in all sorts of different environments because they're used to being in different environments. They're not monolingual. They're tri super people, and that's what we're creating.
I love this. My cup is so full after this conversation. It's really nice to be with people who are also so passionate about this kaupapa. Before we go, do either of you have any resources or anything else that you'd like to promote while we've got an opportunity?
Oh.
I'm hilarious, Stacey. I've actually got this for you right here.
Go run and get it. So
but I really like it because it's really basic and it starts off really little. But probably my biggest thing is actually look at your cupboards. Like, you've got the resources, whānau. Like, we've got this. You've got this, you've got, and actually you've got this, like a Ministry of Education that have some really amazing tau mai te reo kōrero. Again, backyard, look at it. And I'll be setting through some resources of how you can practically incorporate this into a daily iara for people just to see how it can happen daily and naturally. So that's my little plug.
Bye. So as well as those books you mentioned, also I'd say that Māori at Work has a lot for teachers. So everyday phrases that you can use in the classroom. I have it over there, but I feel like you don't need to see me go and run and get it. And so Māori at Work, also, like you say, you have so many beautiful resources, but it's about not making it wallpaper, but making it come to life. Everything you do with tamariki, a resource can only do so much. We curate a lot in our social media to go, this is what I'm seen to do, but actually make that resource work for you. And another resource are actually the tamariki. My tamariki have been my best teacher, and they're so much better at retaining things. It's actually heartbreaking, but then utilize them and ignite what they can do that is a bit harder for us as adults. And in my job in broadcasting, people think that you talk, but actually you need to listen. And I see that that's what you do in your job as well. Because what you do is so important. And so make sure you look after yourselves, encourage each other. I know it's hard. We've got to get you more money, we've got to get you more everything, but know that there is going to be huge gains and you're actually shaping our country every single day.
Yep, and we see time and time again what we can achieve when we're all working together as kaiako under NZEI Te Riu Roa, and so there's no reason that one of these things can't be system level change that benefits tamariki Māori.
Kia ora.
Cool. Well, I better start wrapping us up then, even though I would like to just continue talking for the rest of the afternoon. So, kia ora, ngā mihi nui kia korua. Thank you so much, Joe, for coming on today, and also a huge mihi to you as well, Stacey, for having this kōrero with us and sharing so many valuable pieces of wisdom and ideas and thoughts with us. It's been hugely, hugely beneficial to me, and I'm sure everyone who is watching. To close us off, I have got a little karakia whakamutunga. So join in if you know it, although I can't hear you, so it's fine. Tukua te wairoa kia rere ki ngā taumata, hai ārahi i a tātou mahi, me tā tātou whai i ngā tikanga a rātou mā, kia mau, kia ita, kia kore ai i ngaro, kia pupuri, kia whakamaua, kia tina, kuie, taikie.
Kia ora, Māori ora kia tā.
Māori ora.
Kia ora. And so, just before we go, the recording will be available in the next few weeks. So anyone who's watching today will get an email about how to access it, and we'll be sharing it on the Facebooks as well. So keep an eye out on social. Kia ora.
Kia ora.